Hello, hello. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Christian Wellness for Weary Women, where we heal burnout holistically through trauma-informed functional care. I am here today to talk to you about the calcium lie, which I'm really excited to get into because I currently have a client that I can use as a perfect example of why taking calcium supplements and vitamin D supplements is a complete lie and something that we should steer clear of and retrain our way of thinking around. But before we get into today's episode, I want to invite you into a summit that I'm going to be a part of in the near future. It's a part of, we're promoting it right now, and I've mentioned on here before that I try to participate in some sort of a bundle or a summit every month. I try to. I've done good so far. I've been in one every month since the beginning of the year. And anyways, this one is very unique and I love it because every mom needs to be a part of it. It's called Calm in the Chaos: Real Tools for Understanding and Parenting an Emotionally Intense or Neurodivergent Child. I don't know anyone who doesn't have an emotionally intense child, okay? So it is going to be a very helpful summit. I know that you will be able to find not only tools for helping you to help your emotionally intense or neurodivergent child, but also tools to help you, the mom, okay? And maybe, for example, my interview is about, yes, helping mom. Like, why, if I know what to do in my head, why am I still not able to do it? And we talk about that. And so anyways, it starts April 20th. And is going through the 24th. You can find the link in order to sign up. It's completely free. Sign up in the show notes, and when you end up signing up, you will get access to all of the free resources, and the summits come out, the interviews come out day by day. Mine will come out on the 21st, day 2 of the summit, if you're curious to listen to it. So anyways, let's get into today's episode. Burnout Recovery, the Calcium Lie: Why more calcium is not fixing bone loss or osteoporosis or whatever, even prevention. A lot of women are taking vitamin D supplements and trying to prevent osteoporosis, but there's a whole reason why we experience bone loss, okay? So you've probably definitely been told, or at least heard, that you need to be taking vitamin D, that none of us get enough vitamin D. We're all low in vitamin D. You've probably even had blood tests done, and your blood test has actually come back with low vitamin D in it. And we're going to talk about why that is here in just a second. And so I have a client right now who is a perfect example of why we should not be taking vitamin D and calcium supplements. So she's actually been diagnosed with osteoporosis. So take that for example. So she comes to work with me. She was diagnosed with osteoporosis for years now. She comes to work with me. We get her HTMA results back, and her calcium is through the roof. In fact, her calcium's so high that we call it a calcium shell. So this means it's a big deal. A shell means that her body has become very hardened, because that's what calcium is. So let's just put it into that terms. If you're actually thinking about calcium, it's a hard mineral, and because her calcium is so high in her body, why this doesn't make sense then. Why is she being diagnosed with osteoporosis? So there's a reason for it. The reason is that calcium is getting into the body, but it's not getting into the bones and the teeth. And in fact, the body's probably pulling from the bones and the teeth, and then calcium's just getting dispersed into the soft tissues, the joints, and the arteries. So you can see how this is a big deal. So what minerals are we missing? Why is being diagnosed with osteoporosis not automatically mean that we're deficient in calcium? So what happens is, when we're looking at an HTMA test and it comes back, you have calcium as one of your first minerals that we look at. Then you have magnesium, and you have sodium, and you have potassium. So those next three minerals, along with boron, is one that we look at. Those next three main minerals, magnesium, sodium, and potassium, have a lot to do with if they're really high or really low. Almost every client that I've had come back, their potassium is tanked. Potassium and sodium are huge in dissolving calcium out of the soft tissues and arteries and joints. And so when we see, like what I see, so many people's potassium coming back tanked in the tissues, then we know that calcium is not being dissolved properly, it's not being metabolized properly. And then on top of that, if you have low boron means that it's going to take that dissolved calcium and actually begin depositing it back into the bones and the teeth. And so just taking lots of calcium, and then we're going to get into the vitamin D lie here in just a second, just taking lots of calcium means you're getting calcium in the body, but it's never going to get into the bones and the teeth if you don't have the proper balance of the other minerals to make calcium get where it needs to go. Do you follow me? So the body is mismanaging calcium, so to speak. And this is the interesting part, and you'll see this a lot in pregnant women. All of a sudden, their teeth are just falling out. They're crumbling. They have to have all kinds of dental work after pregnancy or during pregnancy. This is because it's not the body, it doesn't have the proper other minerals to keep calcium in the bones and the teeth. So the body needs calcium because the body is building a whole baby, okay? The body's building a whole baby. And in fact, if you didn't know this, we give away 10% of our minerals during pregnancy, which is 4 pounds of minerals. 4 pounds of minerals you give away for every pregnancy that you have. So you have to replenish those 4 pounds of minerals for every pregnancy. This is why it's super important to nourish your body, genuinely nourish your body with good foods during pregnancy, but also it's super important to replenish those well after pregnancy because you're giving it away. Okay, when you're pregnant, you're giving it to yourself and your baby, and then afterwards you're working on replenishing. And if you're breastfeeding, okay, all of this is like the body is just super stressed because it is having to give out so much. And you can see where if there's stress on top of it, the body is pulling from those reserves, running through tons of magnesium, potassium when it's tanked like that, and it's really low on an HTMA test. It's a sign of chronic stress that the body's been under for a very long time, and the body's not done a very good job of dealing with that stress. And so here's one way. I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions to determine if you actually have high calcium in your body. We're going to talk about low calcium and the difference between high and low calcium in another episode coming up. But today I'm just going to ask you these couple of questions. This is the beauty of HTMA testing, is that it's always tied to something emotional or traumatic in your life. And so here's 2 questions I want you to ask yourself. And if you can answer yes to these 2 questions, then it's likely that you have high calcium in the body. So here's question number 1. Where in your life have you felt the need to armor up, protect yourself, or withdraw? Because if you think about calcium, it's a hard mineral. So if you have actually felt the need to armor yourself and protect yourself from a situation that didn't feel safe, a lot of times we see this in adult children of alcoholic parents. So if you grew, or not just alcoholics, but addicts in general. So if you grew up in a very dysfunctional home where you felt like you had to protect yourself all of the time, you might have high calcium. If you've been in a relationship where you had to armor up and protect yourself all of the time, and then you felt the need to withdraw, then this could be a sign of high calcium, especially if you still feel this way. And then another sign of high calcium in the body is, have you felt numb toward anything or anyone lately? So honestly, this is a huge sign of high calcium because you've become hard. The calcium rises in the body and you literally become hard. You become hard-hearted and your emotions actually become very salt. There's no emotion there. You have an affect reaction. There's not much smiling going on. There's not much laughing going on. There's no humor going on. It's hard to see the joy in life. But it's different than just basic burnout. It's actually a hardness that's come over you. You probably were once a very outgoing person. You probably were once a very enthusiastic person, someone who could find humor in something, someone that smiled at things often. But because of what you've gone through and you've learned, your reaction was to armor yourself against the world or against certain people. Then you now carry emotion. You're emotionless. And that's a big deal, because once you become emotionless and you are hard-hearted towards lots of things, then it's going to be much harder to experience joy in life so that you can come out of burnout, okay? So you can see where high calcium on an HTMA test can give us the polar opposite reading whenever you've actually been diagnosed with something like osteoporosis, or you've been trying to prevent bone loss. So let's touch on the vitamin D issue real quick. You may have heard me talk about this. If you're in my Facebook group, join my Facebook group, because I have a whole vitamin D handout over what we're about to talk about. But lots and lots of women are taking vitamin D, okay? And vitamin D is not bad. We get vitamin D from the sunshine. We get vitamin D from our food. But if we're getting it from other sources other than real whole foods or the sunshine, and then there's probably an issue. Even if you've had a blood test done and your vitamin D comes back low, I'm going to tell you it's probably because calcium's too high in your body, and your body's actually trying to protect you. And so the body's smart, and so it will reduce vitamin D in the body because calcium is being displaced. It's building up in the soft tissues, arteries, joints, okay? Hello, your hard arteries is what gives us heart attacks, calcium buildup. Calcium in the joints is what gives us arthritis. And then whenever you get whenever things start building up in like the joints, the tissues, you just things don't work right anymore. They become hardened, right? You're not as limber anymore. You're not as free flowing anymore. And it can actually crystallize. Like I know someone who has what's called like a crystallized shoulder. And this is clearly low magnesium, sodium, and potassium, or imbalanced magnesium, sodium, and potassium with really high calcium, because it's building up where it's not supposed to be building up. And so when you take vitamin D and you're taking it unnaturally, what vitamin D does is it forces calcium into the blood, but that's it. That's all that it does. It does not ensure that the body's absorbing the calcium into the bones and the teeth the way that it's supposed to. And so again, if you don't have the proper minerals in your body, like magnesium, sodium, potassium, and boron, then calcium is not going to dissolve. It's not going to get put into the bones and the teeth the way that it needs to. It's going to, again, get put in the soft tissues where it should not be going. And this causes a major problem in the body. And vitamin D and calcium are two of the major supplements that women are told to take all the time in order to prevent osteoporosis. But if you want to prevent osteoporosis, you need to be looking at other minerals in the body, okay? Because those are what actually help to balance out calcium and make sure it's getting where it needs to go. And so we have a huge supplement problem. Y'all heard me talk about supplements on here. I'm not a fan of a lot of supplements. I'm only a fan of supplements if they're basically a whole food supplement. That's it. Otherwise, you should really be getting all of your nutrients from food. I think that it's super important. I take plenty of supplements. Hear me out. I take plenty of supplements every day, but they're whole food supplements. They don't have tons of ingredients in them. They're not a multivitamin. They're literally either a beef organ or a straight up magnesium. I'm not taking something that has something I don't know about it in it, and I'm very targeted because I'm doing my HTMA test, and so I know exactly what I'm deficient in, and I know exactly what I need. And so this is where I want you to get unstuck. I don't want you to stay stuck in this issue if calcium is your issue going on. There's so much more to it too. There's other things when it comes to vitamin D. We should be testing the inactive form of vitamin D and the active form of vitamin D. But unfortunately, most people don't even know that you can test two types of vitamin Ds in the body. And what are the numbers? What should we actually be looking for? Okay. And so these are things that if you work with me in Rooted and Restored Wellness, I help you and give you this information so that when you do, if you do want to go get your blood work done and you do want to look at your vitamin D levels, which I am with my client that has been diagnosed with osteoporosis, yet her calcium is through the roof on her HTMA test, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. And yet she's been taking vitamin D and calcium for years. Well, it shows. Let's get off of that and let's focus on what's actually going to work to get you healed and fixed so that you stop fighting the same battle over and over and over again. Here's what you need to get tested if you want to test your vitamin D and you want to test for the active and inactive form. And so, if you work with me, I can tell you, I can help you with all of these things. And so, if high calcium doesn't mean what we think it does, then what does it mean? And so, we're going to talk about low calcium and high calcium on one of the next episodes coming up. It's not going to be the very next episode because I have another interview for you coming up. It'll probably be the next episode 2 weeks from now. But if you're interested in hearing more, follow along, make sure you're listening because I'm going to break down the difference between the two patterns that show up and why. And I'm going to give you more of those questions that you can ask yourself to really gauge on where your calcium levels might be without even having an HTMA test on hand, okay? So with that, I love you guys. Thanks for listening in. You know where to find me. Just go to the show notes. You can sign up for that summit that I mentioned. You can look through my website if you are interested in working with me, or otherwise just get on my email list so that you don't miss a podcast episode coming out and you know what's going on and all the new updates. Be blessed, and I will see you guys next week.